Okay, Storyboard Frame 2.
Unleash your creativity with the mobile Adidas app, where you can customize the colors of your personality.
Okay, it seems a little bit simple. You're just picking a color and the color changes on the shoe. But again, this is an Adobe After Effects problem. It feels honestly needlessly complicated, but we're going to do it because it's going to be really helpful to know how to do app mockup walkthroughs, or at least to know the process for creating them in After Effects. So first thing we're going to do is we're inside frame 2-3, which is frame 2 and 3 in this storyboard. Do this again, other timeline panels. Now what's inside here, this layered Illustrator file, is the color picker, the app, and the background. And then Adidas is just empty, so I'm going to delete that. The background, it might have come through like this. Looks like that. Just grab the layer and scale it up past the edges of the frame. Now the app itself, this is just a placeholder because there's a layered version of this right here. The mobile app mockup is its own composition. So if I grab this and drag it into the composition, you can see now it's in there. I hit S for scale this down. It's the same thing, but it's got different layers to control. So I'm going to turn this original layer off. Now if we go into here, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of layers in here. There's the iPhone frame itself. If I just hit this button, this solos that layer. Turn this transparency grid on. So I have the iPhone frame itself that stays inside, and then the shoe, all the text, colors, text backgrounds, app background, and then empty layers. So the shoe actually is another layered composition right here, the Adidas shoe isolated. So this one is a layered Photoshop file that's now a composition, and this has all the other parts of the shoe isolated out from Photoshop. So if we go back into the mobile app mockup and drag this in, we want to place this and scale it to match where the shoe layer was from before. So I'm just going to hit S, Shift P for scale and position together, and scale this down, and then move it up with position to be about right there. Now again, I can hold down Command while I'm scrubbing these values to get really precise measurements, precise values as I'm dragging. Now if I don't have Command selected, it's like this. When I hold down Command, it goes like this. So it gives you more precise movement when you want to get really in there. Okay. That's good right there. Turn off the shoe placeholder layer. And now we have the layered shoe inside this. This is going to be good because when the cursor picks the toe color 1 to change the color, we're going to want that color to be reflected into this shoe. We change the hue to match. So I'll show you all that process, and you'll know how this works. We've also got if I go back to the frame 2-3, the color picker itself is its own layer. And that's going to end up being right here. Make it a little bit bigger. And that's what we're going to use to select the colors for the toe color 1. Then we're going to have an interaction where the cursor selects the check mark, it goes away, all that stuff. First thing is to just have this color picker pop up, which is a really quick scale animation from 0 to 100%. Well, actually, right now it's at 131.4%, but to that percentage. So just to get started, we'll make a keyframe for the final value, go back a little bit, and then just hit 0 in the scale. Like that, but even faster. Great. Now the next thing is to have that circle, which is going to represent the finger cursor on the mobile phone. And that is really just a shape layer. So as long as we have no layer selected, go up to the rectangle tool, hold it down, and do the ellipse tool right here, and just hold down Shift while I'm dragging. Actually hold down Shift and Command to drag from the center and to create a circle. So something like that is going to be fine. Obviously we're going to change the stroke right here to be just white, and then it's actually a gradient. We don't need that. If I click the stroke word right here, I can change the different options. So I'm just going to make it a solid color, and then click the color, make sure it's white. That's great. And then bring down this stroke thickness to be about 10. Okay, so now we have the cursor. I'm going to right click this layer right here and do transform, center anchor point in layer content. So the anchor point stays right in the middle. Not that we're going to need it per se, but I just like to have it be in the middle. Okay, so now we have a finger cursor. I'm going to go right here in the shape layer, hit enter to rename, call it cursor. Great. So in the video, the cursor appears, it goes to click the toe color, and then the picker shows up. So the way to do this first is to create the path of the cursor using position keyframes, and then we can go and create the rest of it around that animation. So we can go in here. I'm just going to drag this in point to be not at the beginning. I'm going to move this color picker back to for now. So just a few position keyframes right here. So I'll hit the stopwatch for position. It'll start right there. So I'll have it keyframe start at the beginning of that layer right there at the end point. Move it down a little bit. Have this select the toe color, and then that's going to be when the color picker shows up. We're going to keyframe some interactions happening later too. We're just roughing in the movement right now. Yes, and then I'm going to actually copy and paste this keyframe a little bit so it kind of sits there and pauses while that picker shows up. And now we can move this and just kind of make it look like it's searching for a color. Like that. That last keyframe can be right around here. And then we're going to want to have it move down and click that check mark. And that's going to be at the end of the color picker. So Alt right bracket to cut the out point of that layer. So let's watch this. Okay, we're going to want to have a pause right here because that's where it gets selected. And then it's going to move down to the check mark. So the way to do that is to just move this last keyframe down a little bit, extend this out point, and then just copy and paste that second to last keyframe to give it a pause. There we go. Boom. It's a little bit too slow. Now, this is a great shortcut. Instead of having to manually move every one of these keyframes to make them faster, like this, which can be really annoying and tedious, we can actually just drag a box around all these, and as long as we have the last one selected or the first one, hold down Alt or Option and click and drag, and it scales all those keyframes proportionally in time. So I just want to make it faster, so I'm just dragging to the left to make the time between those keyframes shorter so it moves faster. That's pretty much it right there. And we can just keyframe a little bit of a green flash happening over this check mark, and that will show that we've clicked on the check mark, and it can go away. So it's actually, if we click on that right there, this will become up a little bit faster. There we go. Awesome. We've roughed in the animation now, so we can just start to put some decorations around it. First thing I want to do is just animate that check mark, because I think it's just going to be easy. And all that's going to be is just a solid layer that's a green, and we'll mask it out to match the edge of this. Now to do that is you go to Layer, New, Solid, or Command or Control Y, also a helpful shortcut. Now when I do that, it's going to ask me how big I want it, what the color is going to be, and to name it. So I'm just going to say green check mark. And then in the color, select that, just make it some kind of green that feels like a, you know, a yes, like a check type green, something like that. So it's going to be full screen. That's fine. If I select that layer now, hit T for opacity and just bring it down to 25% just for now to see what's been everything below it, we can use the pen tool to create a mask around this checkmark box. So right here, go to the pen tool, make sure that layer is selected, and I can just click this little path like this, give it some curve like that. Boom. Zoom in a little bit, make it more precise like that. Okay, great. That is our green check mark. And just for fun, I'm going to click on this layer color right here, this red, and make it green. Make it a green layer. We'll get into color coding layers later, but it really helps me to like separate things out visually like that too. Okay, so we've got the green check mark. I'm going to make the opacity 50. That should be good. Now all I really need is it to pop on and then fade off. So I'm just going to drag this in point of the layer to be the playhead like that, and then hit the opacity stopwatch, and I can start at 50 and then really quickly fade to 0, and that's the end of that layer. So I'll just do Alt right bracket to cut the out point like that. It's just a nice little flash to show an action, and maybe I can make that a little bit longer. There we go. If I move this layer down now where, boom. So as the cursor moves over, the green solid pops on and then fades immediately to give it the illusion of a click. That's perfect. And so then once that click happens, that green happens, this color picker layer can now disappear too. Maybe even a little bit faster, like that. Great. Just for fun, I'm going to make this opacity a little bit darker, a little bit more opaque, 65%. Cool. Now, same thing for this toe color selection too. When we come down here and the cursor selects that toe color, I want a little flash like that too to go over this area for the illusion of a interaction. And what I can do is actually duplicate this checkmark layer and bring it over right here and just change the mask itself to match. So what I want to do is actually hold down Command right here with the pen tool activated and delete that keyframe so we just have a rectangle. And now I can just drag this over with the cursor and place it over that part. Just like that. Now I want to change that color from green to just a white to make it look like a interaction. And the way to do that is I can go back up to Layer and select Solid Settings, which will bring this window back up, and I can change the color to just like a white. So now it just flashes white. A little bit too early. Awesome. So let me just check in this
Adidas app, where you can customize the colors of your personality.
Okay. So the cursor goes away, it goes down to the screen as the app zooms in. And that's easy. Because what we can do, that's the cool part about having compositions for all these things, we can actually animate this whole thing by itself, moving and scaling, because it's its own composition with its own parameters. Okay, we got that. Now the next thing to do is to show this magnification trick, which again is a really helpful thing to know, how it is magnified right there. That is really just a track mat of the same color picker layer, just enlarged. So what we got to do is we're going to duplicate this cursor, Command D. I'm going to rename this cursor mat. And what I want to do is just move both of these away from their animation keyframes. Because if I hit U for cursor mat, it has the same animation. I don't want to do that though. What I want to do is actually delete these keyframes from the cursor mat and then parent this cursor mat to the cursor. So this is not actually going to be animated. It's just going to follow this animation. So I'm going to hit that keyframe stopwatch button to delete the keyframes, and then I'm going to drag this pick whip right here to parent to the cursor. Now it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't look any different right now. If I change the color of the stroke, you can see how if I make this like bigger, it's all moving around, but it's not actually animated because it's a child of the cursor that's actually animated. So parenting like this, parents and child relationships are really helpful inside After Effects. So the cool part about this is, say I want to go and change the animation of this cursor, and the cursor mat will move in the exact same way as the cursor. So we don't have to worry about keyframes being changed between these two layers and them not matching up. This one will just follow whatever this one does. So now that I have this parented, I want to first of all turn this off because I don't want a stroke for this layer. I actually want a fill, and I'll show you why in a second. So we have the fill set up. Make sure the opacity is 100%, and now it's covering up that matte or the color picker. And that's great, because what I want to do is actually duplicate this color picker, and also if I hit U, it's got a scale animation. Now I'm not going to want that. It doesn't need to be scaled. It's just going to represent the zoomed in version of this color picker. So I'll do the same thing I did before for the cursor matte. Delete these keyframes for the color picker too, and then make this a child of the original color picker. So I'm just going to rename this color picker magnified, and then hit the scale button and scale it up like that. Now it still animates because it's a child of the color picker. If you're not seeing any of these, click this button down here, the toggle switches and modes button, because you'll have different things that you want to access, but there's no reason to have them all in one line either. Okay, great. Now we have the color picker magnified. It's parented to the original color picker. Now we just want this magnified color picker to be revealed by this cursor matte. And the way to do that is to select color picker magnified and make sure the track matte pick whip is selected, and we just point it to the cursor matte. Now if I zoom in, you can see how it's being revealed by the fill of that cursor. That's perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do is right here is going to be where the color gets selected, which again will have another quick interaction, solid color fade right here. So I'm going to duplicate this one again, drag it to be right here. Now you're going to see it right here, but we don't need that. All we really need is the opacity animation, and it's going to be, this will show up as part of the cursor matte. So I'm going to delete this mask actually. So now the whole screen has that solid layer. And then go back to track matte and select cursor matte. So now there's two layers that are being dictated by their opacity by one layer, the cursor matte. So the thing about this is, I want to make this opacity fade faster. And then I want it to go away after that interaction happens. So cursor, color picker magnified is going to end. I'm going to drag the out point of that layer to be, and you can see how it pops on and off in the screen. It's basically going to end right as that interaction happens. There we go. So I want the magnified color picker to just show up right there as we see just the color palette. So as I have the playhead selected right there, I'm just going to drag the endpoint of that layer to be at the playhead. There we go. Okay, so now we have the interaction set up. I want to smooth out these keyframes. I mean, they're not too bad, but there's a nice command that you should know about. So if I draw a box around these keyframes, I can right click, go down to Keyframe Assistant, and then select Easy Ease right here. And you can see how the icons have changed. So it does a nice little smoothing of the keyframes. It eases them, but like in kind of a basic way. So if I go in here and select the graph editor, you can see how they've started to, instead of being flat boxes, they have a little bit of an arch. Now if I just hit undo and show you, this is what it was like before. A lot of the, very jagged, rough animations, like we always see with the standard keyframes. If I go in here and select these and then do Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease, the icons change. I go back here, now they're smoother. And you can see in the playback as well. Just a little bit smoother. So that's another great trick to know. You don't have to always go into the graph editor and grab these points and drag these handles out. A lot of the times you can use Easy Ease to just do what it says, like easily ease these keyframes. Knowing when to get deep into the graph editor with the handles is important, and then knowing when you can just do a quick command like Easy Ease to smooth out these animations is also important. There we go. Okay, next thing I want to focus on is bringing the phone in from the side of the screen. And to do that, we're going to have to parent all of these things to the phone, because right here is the mobile phone mockup. So if I hit P for position and move it around, nothing goes with it, especially those interaction buttons don't go with it either, and that's not good. So we want to make sure that we parent all this stuff to this mobile phone mockup composition so everything can move with it. And the thing about that is we have some things that are parented already. So it's just important to know that you can parent things to other parented things and so on. And I want to show you that process. So we look at the cursor mat. This is the magnified part of the color picker. This is actually a child of cursor, because you can see right here where it's parented to. So we actually want to parent the cursor to the mobile phone app mockup, and this will then come with it. So this is parented to this, that will then become parented to this. And so all of those transformations and those parent and child relationships will cascade down, just so you know. So what we need to do is just make sure that we are picking the layers that don't have any parents connected to them. So not this one and not this one. These ones right here, we want to make sure get parented to this layer. And then the ones that are already parented to other things that are included will also follow along. So you bring that pick whip like that. And now, as you can see, if I'm going to scale this, or if I move this mobile phone mockup layer, everything goes with it, including when I scale it. So now we have everything connected to this mobile phone mockup layer. So now we can make some animations to bring this phone in. Now again, this is where it's going to end up. So we'll make those keyframes at the end. We'll go back to the beginning, scrub in the X direction to go horizontal, and it comes on. I actually would like it to scale up a little bit as it gets here too. So actually move this keyframe back a little bit to make that the starting point, and then bring this up a little bit like that. Of course, we're going to smooth it out with the graph editor, but that's what we got so far. So now we go to the graph editor, and we can actually select both of these animations to go to the graph editor. And you can see it's not really helpful all the time. It is sometimes helpful to see both of those things put together, overlaid, but the values are so different on these two parameters, it doesn't really graph that well. So I'm just going to stick to the position first. There we go, slides in. And the scale, I actually want both of them to be eased. Nice. And then just kind of separate these out a little bit. Cool. This will be retimed with the voiceover too, but we're just getting all the motions down. And so when this happens, this gets selected. I want to zoom in a little bit more towards the shoe. So I'm just going to do another scale animation right here. And actually have it move down a little bit too. So also a position animation at the same time as the scale animation. Go back here. Okay, great. And the cursor moves away, so we all kind of can focus on the shoe. This is starting to come together. So now we want this color to change to what had been selected in this color selection process. And it's actually gonna be really easy to do. I want to grab this hex value of this color right here first. So if I zoom in, it's going to be this color that gets selected just to make the call, and it's going to make this color change. One way that I've found to pick accurate colors easily is to add a solid layer and then use the color picker and then copy the hex value. So if we just do Command Y to add a solid, and then I grab the color picker eyedropper and just click that, and I see this is the hex value that's been selected. Just copy that. I'm actually going to cancel that because I don't really need a solid, I just needed the hex value copied. But what I can do is go into this mobile app mockup, and I'll show you something that's really cool about vector layers in Illustrator and then brought into After Effects. So this is the color selections layer. If I solo it, you can see these are all separated out by its own layer. And because it was a vector layer created in Illustrator and brought in to After Effects, I can actually convert these vector shapes into shape layers by themselves. And then from there, can just keyframe the color change because they're basically shape layers that you would create in After Effects from scratch. And the way to do that is just to right click that layer. Because it's an Illustrator file, I can right click this and go to the Create menu and select this right here. Create shapes from vector layer. And what that does is makes a copy of that layer as a shape layer. You can see the icon's different. If I expand this out, these are actually their paths with fill colors, and we can add and animate all this stuff now because they're just like shape layers in After Effects. This is really great because this group 4 right here is actually the top shape that I want to keyframe the color change in. And I can do that right here. if I just expand that fill, I can see the color that it is currently, and I can actually hit this stopwatch and make a keyframe to change that color. So I made a keyframe for that part because I want to go from that color to the new color. I'm just going to move the playhead down a little bit. Click that color swatch and then just paste that hex value in there. And a keyframe gets added automatically. So now that color changes really easily and precisely too. It's a little bit slow, but there we go. Maybe faster. There we go. That color now changes to the precise color that we want. If I just take the solo off, now I can see that this color changes right there. Perfect. I can hit U on this layer just to see that one animated property. If we go back to frame 2-3, we just got to make sure that it changes at the right time. You can see it's already changed, so it might not be the right time. Oh, it's perfect. Actually, right there is where we'd want it. Boom. Right there is where we want to change the color. So I'll just go into here and move these keyframes down just a little bit. Maybe like that. There we go. Perfect. I just noticed this mask right here is kind of off, so I just want to fix that. Great. Awesome. Okay, last thing we got to do is just have this toe color actually change on the shoe. And that's going to involve actually having to do a hue shift because it's a Photoshop layer. It's not a vector layer. But we can go into here. And now that we know what the hex value is for that color, we can use an effect to change that. So if we go into the Adidas shoe, you can see where the, let's see. This one right here, color ISO 1, is what needs to be changed. I'm just going to change this color so that I know that's the one to do. Now in the effects and presets panel, there's a couple options you can do. I'm just going to search change, and so you can do change to color. I'm going to show you that. So we can change the color from and change it to, and then we can set different settings. And it's honestly hit or miss, but sometimes it works really great. So we have this eyedropper. I'm just going to select an orange right there, and you can see how it does that. This, by checking this box right here, you can see what's actually being selected and being changed. And then changing the color too, all I have to do is just paste that hex value in there. And it's not great right now because this is where you kind of mess with this stuff. Change the hue, lightness, and saturation. No. Saturation, maybe. No. So that's pretty good right there because you can get the saturation differences in the color, and now we just have to tweak these tolerances. There we go. Just by tweaking the hue tolerance, we've got it set up. Okay, there we go. Now it's been changed. Honestly, the easiest way to do this is just to duplicate this layer and just do a fade, an opacity animation. So it's going to go, so this one before, just turn this off for the original, and then this one becomes after. So then on the after layer, we just do an opacity animation. There we go. It just fades. A little bit too slowly, but okay. Then we go back out to this mock-up, into the storyboard frame 2. Just make sure we know when the timing is. Oh, that's pretty good. Just a little bit quicker. But I like the idea of seeing that change too. So about right there, I want it to start. And just bring these in. Cool. Okay, so that's really it. Now we just need to make sure everything's timed out with the voiceover, and it's all good.
Unleash your creativity with the mobile Adidas app, where you can customize the colors of your personality. Unleash your creativity with the mobile Adidas app, where you can customize the colors of your personality. Unleash your creativity with the mobile Adidas app, where you can customize the colors of your personality.
That's pretty sweet, honestly. That's in a good spot. All I would really do is just have this slowly moving as the voiceover is going. So by slowly moving, I mean just growing in scale over the rest of the course of this composition. So really just going to the end of the composition with the mobile app mockup layer and just having it slowly increase like that. Just to give it something to do. And you can see right here, it actually has a little bit of an acceleration and then a constant speed. I actually don't want it to do that. I just want it to stay constant the whole time. But that's a little bit difficult in the speed graph. So here's a good way to utilize the value graph in a way that the speed graph is deficient. So in the value graph for scale, you can see what happens here. This is like the typical, this is the scale that it starts in at about 50% scale. And then it grows in scale really quickly right there, a nice little ease, and then stays at this same scale, and then scales again. And you can see right here where it starts to slowly grow and then ease again. But I want to just keep this actually going constant until the very end of the composition. I don't like this little kind of plateau right here as it like starts to ease out. So the nice thing about the way scale works in the value graph is here are the Bezier handles you can use to just tweak this value like this. So it actually eases out and then stays constant the whole time. There we go. Scale stays steady, and then it grows and stays constant. That's really nice. That's a really nice use of the value graph that the speed graph really can't do. And that's it. Storyboard block 2 is over. And honestly, this is the most tedious and complicated part of the whole spot. So when you get done with this, give yourself a big pat on the back, because it's like kind of all downhill from here, honestly, after this.